Okay, so my name is Chinenye, like I said before, and my discussion is around education. And the title of this is Going Back to Yesterday in order to find out tomorrow. And what it's about really is, started? Okay. So what it's about is things that we have to do to recover a situation that is almost lost, for which most of us have probably given up, and we probably think this cannot be solved in our generation, but we have to face the ugly reality and turn it into something else. So I am one of those people who believe very strongly and passionately in Nigeria. I believe in Nigeria because I believe in the people of Nigeria. Every day when I wake up, I do not see people who have given up. Instead, I see people who are confronting the challenges of their day and making the very most of it. And I often think when I have discussions with people that it's a disservice to talk constantly about the things that are not right. I think we need to recognize the things that are right, and then we need to decide if we want to do something about it. For everyone in this room here today, when you wake up in the morning tomorrow, you're not going to sit and be thinking to yourself, I won't go out today. I had a bad day yesterday, and today is going to be worse, and I'm going to sit down and just breathe and whine. Instead, like the 168 million Nigerians, you get up and you confront the day. And that is something that we should be proud of. That is something that I firmly believe is what is the character that will create the country that we want it to be. So I work in education because of this singular belief that somehow in education, we have to find the keys to unlock the promise of our country. And this is pretty hard, given the data that I'm going to show to you, to actually want to believe. And for those of you who have gone to school, particularly the universities, in the past 2 decades, you will agree with me that that situation is completely abnormal. For those who are older, who have had an opportunity to go to a better go through a better experience in university, they look at what's happening in the universities today and they say, well, you know, this isn't working for us. And so we have in our country today approximately 2 years for a graduate of a university to get a first job. And that job that he's getting is not a job that's commensurate with his degree. It's a job that you and I would rather not talk about. It takes almost 5 years for university graduates in Nigeria today to get a job that is a professional job. And even then, most of them don't last more than 2 years in that particular role. So we've got a crisis. But that crisis can only be corrected, not if we go back towards what is the worst in us, but rather we go for what is the best in us. And unfortunately, globalization means there's only one best. There is no Nigerian best. There is no African best. You're good or you're not good. You're global or you're not global. You're competitive or you're not competitive. And we have no choice but to answer to that reality. And no matter how much we want it to be different, this is the challenge of this generation, and we must confront it all together. But there is hope. There is real hope, because I truly believe as well that this land is green. This country of ours is a country that is blessed. When you look at the people sitting next to you, or you travel across this country, you will find people just like yourself who believe in themselves and have a desire to actualize their full potential. And we have to assist them by doing so. And the one place where that journey actually starts is in the school. So if we do not face the challenge of our schools, the challenge of education, and start to fix those schools, then truly there is no hope for tomorrow. So I and a couple of my colleagues, we spent quite a bit of time traveling around the country, looking at examples of what is the worst of the educational situation in Nigeria, and we think we have an answer. Today I'm going to present to you one of the things that we believe can actually lead the way. I don't know, this slide talks about our country, and the print is very small, but I think you can make it out. For a country that is 75% of the GDP of West Africa, 168 million people, we should not be where we are. But we need not worry, because there is a solution. And it's on the last line. The young people of this country, in many industries and in many ways, have already shown us that it is possible to turn adversity into something else. And so they've come from the so-called rough areas of Ajegunle, and they have brought out music that all of us dance to. They've brought out fashion. They've brought out all sorts of things that we today recognize and celebrate as excellence. And that tells us that indeed, if we must change this country, the hope for that change lies in the young people, not in those like me who have lost our hair, but in the really young ones who are driving and who desire and who have said no. Even though Nigeria has said you will not be, they have said we must be, and they're making their way. So how do we do this? And how are we driving this? I think to move it forward, we started our experience by thinking about where we were coming from ourselves. And for me, this was me when I was very young. I was brought up in a university environment, surrounded by books. And my brothers and I were 7. We literally competed on who was reading what and what was more advanced than the other. And this is a luxury today. Today in Nigeria, children do not read. And because they don't read, we believe that there is a challenge in terms of their ability to understand what they need to grasp and control the environment in which they live. And of course, like every kid, I grew up, not me, but almost me. Move on. Move. Okay. All right, so move. When financial systems fail, everybody panics. All of us in Nigeria witnessed to the huge problems that we went through with the financial services sector. We also saw our government and the entire society rise to save the financial system. And yet we have not seen the same thing happen with the single most important component of our society, and that's education. Instead, what we've seen is this. Currently, and these are statistics from the Federal Ministry of Education itself, what you currently have is this scenario, where, as it stands, only 3% of Nigerians will actually get into university today. Because today, in this country, we have a total tertiary education population of slightly over 1.3 million people in a country of 168 million. Even worse than that, as the statistics show you, only 14% of the children in Nigeria today will actually get to senior secondary school. The rest of them will fall by the wayside after JSS. And where do they fall into? So all these children at the age of 13, 14, fall out of the educational system, and they fall into what? It gets worse, because on a national average, only 27% of the teachers that we currently have are qualified to teach the subjects that they teach. And that's because, and this is the statistic that came from testing them in the same material that they actually are supposed to teach. This is what the numbers are saying. And it gets even more challenging. So stay with me a while. Early child development education, only 39% of the schools in Nigeria have provision for this. As a result, we have an enrollment of about 2 million as opposed to what we should have, which is 22 million. So by extension, in the early childhood, fully 20 million of the children that we expect tomorrow to be about are not getting the benefits of early childhood education. And on the other side, in basic education, which takes you currently up to JSS level, only 1 in 3 school-aged children are actually in school. So effectively, we have something close to 10 million children wandering the streets of Nigeria out of school. How do we confront this challenge? It's bleak, but it gets even worse. Because when you climb up to a tertiary level in JAM, what we have is 1.5 million applicants approximately every single year, and a university system that can only accommodate 10% of that number. So essentially, 1.5 million applicants take the exam, and we admit something about 150,000 into the universities. When you add the other tertiary education, like polytechnics and all, it comes to about 300,000. So net, every year, 1.5 million people take exams to get into the tertiary level of education, and effectively only 300,000 of them get in. The rest go back, and maybe like Tokwe was over there, like you were saying, you find yourself in a cycle where you can actually say to yourself, well, it's okay to be 37. And like he said, unless you find that thing inside you, that gift inside of you, you could actually be trapped. So we have millions of children trapped in situations where they feel tomorrow is not possible. So how then do we build a nation? How? And it goes on. In WAEC and NECO exams, for the past 20 years or so, we haven't done more than, the figure there is generous, I think. In NECO 2 years ago, it was 10% of the children who took the exams that passed with 5 credits, including English and math. We have places where we have scores of 10 out of nearly 700,000 people taking an exam. Only 10 come out with 5 credits, with A's in those 5 credits, 10. So what do we do? This quote by Robert Lee expresses, I think, in its entirety what it is that we feel that we need to bring to bear when we talk about education and humongous problems like this. We have to accept that the wheels grind slowly and that things move slowly, but we must not, as he says, it is history that teaches us to hope. And hope we must have, because when you say you have no hope, all that is left is destruction. So what have we done? What we've done in our side is to say, okay, this is the reality of our world today. People live with technology, but many people are disenfranchised. But slowly, slowly, in the past 3 years or 4 years, we've had a massive growth in terms of access to internet. It's at the coastal areas and hasn't yet penetrated into the country. But when it does, certain things will start to happen. You would see the entirety of this poor population moving into the cloud economy, and they will have access to education through technology. So we believe that if you get the ecosystem in place, touching each and every one of these people, using technology to do so, you can actually innovate and recreate the education system. And this is not theory, because we've done it. What we've done in the States, in Nigeria, is that we've made these choices evident. To a state that has zero oil income, and we've worked with a team there under the leadership of the governor and his cabinet, and we've been able to start a process of transformation. In Cross River State today, and I'll dial forward on these slides so that we can get to the meat of the issue. Like any other country in Nigeria, this is the current state. In the last 1 year, 10,000 teachers signed up to convert themselves from analog to digital teachers. They understood after we had explained to them that the only way in which they can reach the greatest number of people with quality education was by using technology. And that they themselves had to do the conversion first if they were to be able to manage the students inside the classroom. And so on their own and with their own money, they invested in laptops. And today, Cross River State has the highest distribution or the broadest distribution in terms of geography of computers in the hands of the most important people, the teachers themselves. In each and every village, in every community where these 10,000 teachers now live, they have gone through training. And in that training, they have adopted the idea that they can actually become. This is where they were when they first bought the laptops. This was the picture. 27% of them did a pre-assessment test. And only, I mean, 2,000 of them did the first pre-assessment test, and only 27% of them came across 50, which means they could use a mouse. And then we did 40 hours of intensive training, and this was the result. They flipped it around. They literally flipped it around. We're talking about people that you don't expect can ever use a PC. They picked it up, and they did what they had to do. And today, this is where they stand. So today, what we expect is we are driving a campaign that says you must put the teacher first. You must have heard about one laptop per child and all those type of programs. But you know what? In the classroom, it's not the student that teaches the teacher, it's the teacher that teaches the student. So unless you go to the teacher first, educate the teacher, empower the teacher, and show them that they too can make the transition from analog to digital, they will not move. So the big rock that we face in our country today is that we must go back to the teachers. We have to focus on the teachers and learn to celebrate them as indeed we did before. For those who are older, they will know that the most celebrated person in every community in Nigeria used to be the teacher. When the teacher stands up, or the headmaster stands up, or the school principal stands up in a public gathering, everybody sits down. When he says, this is the way we are going, everybody falls in line. So we've got to remove that rock. And we have to remove that rock by way of driving the capability so the teachers do not feel disenfranchised and disconnected from the system itself. Once they do that and they make that move, they can take this land and they can transform it to what we want it to be. So today, we say big things are always attractive, the Big Bang Theory, but you have to do it like Mother Teresa says, in small ways. And when you start by the small, then you can get to the big. My journey started when I stood up in a crowd in Ghana, Pan-African Teacher Conference. And I said to the teachers who were gathered that I do not understand why every time I see a teacher, they smile. Their shoes are turned up like this, their trousers are torn, they're afraid at the cuffs, but they look at you and they smile. And said to me, stay to the end and I'll tell you why. And I stayed to the end of the conference, and this is what she said. She said, we smile when we look at you because we see in you the fulfillment of all the work that we have done. And that day, in front of 50 or so very high-level people in government and about 300 or so teachers, I cried. I cried because I understood finally that this is where we have been getting it really wrong. Until we return ourselves to the position where we put the teachers first, we cannot start the process of change in education. And I'm going to ask you, if you stand or sit in this audience today and you can remember someone in your past, any teacher in your past who said to you, you can be, and you will be, then you'll join us in saying, let's put the teachers first and let's change our country. Thank you very much.